Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. Did Ole Gunnar Solskjaer get it right or wrong against Wolves? We'll be looking at some key things there. We'll also be looking at some, yet again, unfortunately for Ole, ridiculous comments in the post-match interview and a few other things as well. But let's just fly into this straight away. I want to say, did he get it right or wrong? With a draw, I think, in life there is a set of scales and it very rarely sits in the middle. A draw is a result that's in the middle, but is it a good result? Is it a bad result? Did Ole get it right? Did he get it wrong? I think he got it wrong, and I think the interesting thing I want to start off with is to say this. Manchester United at the moment are averaging 1.4 points a game. They've got 35 points after 25 games. There are 13 games to go. We will end up with 53 points if we continue down this road of averaging 1.4 points a game. 53 points is what we'll end up the season with, and in the last three Premier League seasons, that would put you 9th, 8th and 8th. We are currently on course for our worst ever Premier League finish. Worst ever. And we are currently on our worst ever Premier League start to a season, and it is February now. The only season that trumps this is back in 1989, where we got 48 points. So that's how bad things are. And I think also when you look at it, the last 5 Premier League games, we've lost 3, we've drawn 1, and we beat Norwich. We've taken 4 points from 15. Things are not getting better, they're getting worse. And this was my surprise this morning, is that I feel because of the transfer window and because of Bruno and Ighalo, there is this feeling around Manchester United that obviously people didn't want to walk out yesterday. People didn't really want to sing the songs yesterday. But the reality is, we've sort of been diluted by the signings and the positivity. And Bruno was a big positive yesterday. We'll talk about that. But the reality is, things are getting worse, not better. Like, the results this year show that. We've lost to Arsenal, we've lost to Burnley, we've lost to Liverpool, we've drawn with Wolves, and we beat Norwich. Well, wow, Norwich are awful, aren't they? So statistically, things are getting worse. But even I feel that things... I always felt yesterday that I was blinded by the positivity. Oh, yeah, everything's fine. But actually, if you look at it statistically, a draw was very likely yesterday. Even a loss could have been a possibility. So, yes, I think it was a bad result for United yesterday. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's comment that, let's be honest, after the game, he said, let's be honest, who breaks Wolves down? Wolves have conceded a goal in every one of their last 9 Premier League games. I think there's only 1 or 2 Premier League sides that haven't scored against them this season. So to come out with a comment and say Wolves are a hard team to break down, who really breaks them down? Southampton have scored 2 against them in the last month. Watford have scored 2 against them in the last month. Newcastle have scored against them. They're not hard to score against. The problem is he's got to try and make that lie a fact, because it took till the 71st minute for us to have a shot on their goal in the box. And that was a tame effort from Andreas Pereira. So I feel that with Manchester United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a lot went wrong yesterday. And I'm very, very concerned about that. I have had time to think about the Bruno Fernandes thing. And I think that's the big thing that people want to talk about. The misuse of Bruno. I was very angry. I've said this before. When you do a match reaction, it's straight after the game. And, it's instantaneous. It's a reaction. You haven't had time to digest it. I thought about it, and later into the night, I thought, you know what? We did get hold of the game a little bit more with Bruno in the deep role, and Pereira was dreadful, and maybe we would have lost the game if we kept Pereira there. So I can see why it happened, but let's call a spade here. We bought an attacking midfielder who's got goals and assists in him to create things, and after 20 minutes in his first debut, we put him as a CDM, as a holding midfielder. And that just says everything about how embarrassing the situation is at Manchester United and why people are angry, thinking about protests and chanting Glazer and Woodward out, because that's the situation Manchester United Footballer Club are in. The facts are this. Take it away from Ole for a moment. The facts are this. We are enduring our worst ever start to the Premier League. When did the Premier League start? 92. This is, worst ever Premier League start in 30 years, right? Basically 30 years. We are where we deserve to be. We are creating nothing. And we are when we buy an attacking midfielder that we need, because we've been putting up with, sick eyes with Lingard and Pereira for the last few months, we go and put Bruno Fernandes there. And I would ask you this. When Lingard and Pereira have massively, massively underperformed this season, have we ended up putting them as a holding midfielder? No. But we buy somebody who can do the attacking midfield role, and within minutes he's into the CDM role. So that really, really annoyed me. And for somebody on their debut to have to go and do that was disappointing of the highest order. And it doesn't surprise me that we struggled to create chances. Having said that, I thought his overall game was a positive, Bruno Fernandes. If you look and watch him back, his passing was very good. He had the most touches, he had the most passes, he had the most shots, he had the most clearances. That's playing for the predominant period of the game as a CDM, and he still managed to have the most shots on goal. So we've got a player there. I know we've got a player there. I take no interest in what people on social media are trying to do. You got the Pratt in their hat and all his mates talking about what a flop he is at 48 million. I mean, this is just for Twitter retweets and likes of idiots. I mean, when you tweet out something taking the piss out of Bruno Fernandes and people are retweeting it and liking it, I'm like, I ain't even jumping into this idiot fest. Like, you bought Pepe. You bought Pepe and it's took him 20-something games to look anywhere near decent. Bruno Fernandes has just been playing as a CDM. He played 20 minutes in his position. I don't think you can start calling him a flop yet. But they will do because they're obsessed. So let's move on from that. I thought Bruno did well. I liked his leadership. I liked the fact that he was shouting at Wan-Bissaka and everyone else. But this is where I want to bring a positive in. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said in his press conference afterwards, after the match, that, you know, we're working on stuff but players aren't moving, basically. And it instantaneously took me back to Mourinho in the last few months where we ridiculed him and he kept coming out and saying, we've been working on stuff in training and they're just not doing it. And Ollie's sort of hinting that as well. And you've got to look at recurring themes. And I think yesterday we saw some recurring themes. These players, I said it in my post-match reaction, they're not football intelligent. They don't have intelligence. And I think this is a big problem that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has got. I said it with Dan James. Luke Shaw makes the overlap. Bruno Fernandes is on the edge of the box. He chooses Luke Shaw, a player that doesn't get assists over a player that does. That's not football intelligence. Wan-Bissaka, I like Wan-Bissaka. I gave him 7 out of 10. I thought he had a good defensive game again. He made a brilliant tackle on Jimenez that would have been a one-on-one. He put a cross in the end that could have been another assist for Delot, although I think the Wolves centre-back misjudged the height of it. But Wan-Bissaka going forward, I wouldn't say he's bad, but he's very robotic in the way he goes forward. It doesn't look natural. And I think when Fernandes is telling him to make moves and this, that and the other, when Wan-Bissaka's on the ball, it's very stunted. It doesn't mean he's not going to put a cross in it. It doesn't mean he's not going to get past the player. But it looks stunted. He lacks that fluidity in the attacking mindset. Defensively, he's one of the best in the world. Attacking, not so much so. I think Luke Shaw struggles with that a little bit. Certainly people like Dan James, Andreas Pereira, they're struggling massively. Anthony Martial gets a lot of stick, and I'm a fan of Anthony Martial, but yesterday I'm willing to go with what everyone says and said he had, you know, he's been like this for a while now. The problem with Anthony Martial is people compare him to Jimenez. It's like comparing a Ferrari to a Land Rover. Both very good cars, but both very different. Like, Martial is a Ferrari and Jimenez is a Land Rover. They're both very, very good at what they do, but in different situations. Yesterday, the Land Rover, it was a 0-0 game. You've got to graft, you've got to get through the muddy puddles, you've got to get up the steep gradients. It wasn't a racing track where you can just put your foot down and the Ferrari will blast it away. We're playing Anthony Martial in a team that needs a Jimenez, or a team that needs a Zlatan, a prime Zlatan, or a team that needs a Haaland. We need a big man who's good with the ball at his feet and also is quite quick. That's what we need. So people, when they're having a go at Anthony Martial, he just doesn't suit that team. It's not that he's a bad player. He's just not that number 9. And you could take Aguero and put him into that team and he wouldn't do well. Messi, it's not that team. Look around Martial. There's no right winger for a start. God knows what Mata was doing yesterday. It was like pass the parcel, wasn't he? Running around, little pass here, little there. And it's nice to watch, but actually, I thought Mata had a bad game when I watched it. I was like, yeah, he's getting on the ball and that, but what's your position? What are you doing? You come in deep, you're doing little 5-yard passes. It looks good, but what are you doing? What's your position? And what problems are you causing Wolves back 5? And this goes into it again. Too many crab football yesterday. Side to sides, crab, not crap. You could say crap. Side to side passes. Too much of that. Back to the Van Gaal days. Side to side to side. Too many little touches here and there. But nothing that's hurting Wolves. Wolves play with a back 5. We played with Martial against 3 centre-backs and Dan James. Mata wasn't against their centre-backs or against their left-back. He was wandering into the midfield. The midfield was congested. We tried to go down the wing, but we've putting a cross into the box is a waste of time. We've got no height. Martial's not tall. Dan James and Mata, definitely not tall. And Pereira's no good in the air. But we persist going down the flanks. Martial needs to play in a team that's got Rashford and Dan James in it. Or Rashford and Greenwood in it. Or even going back to Ollie's first 3 months, Rashford and Lingard, where it's a front 3 that interchanges and all about movement and getting on the ball and running with the ball. Standing statically up front as a number 9 with nothing around him is a waste of time for Martial. You can't hit him with the ball. He's not Harry Kane. He's not Jimenez. He's not going to do that job. So I think Martial is getting criticism and I don't disagree with it, but he's not that player. People are going, oh, look at Martial, look at Martial. He's not that number 9. There are different types of players who play as a number 9, and you have to play a different type of way. And this comes back to the coaching again. We are not playing to Anthony Martial's strengths. We are not playing the sort of football that suits him. He's got nobody close to him. Martial thrives on little 1-2s and quick play. Our play is so slow. We don't get people in around him. So for United, Ighalo might work quite well because although I don't think he's going to be particularly good, people will go, oh, drop Martial for Ighalo. It's not about how bad Martial is. It's about the style of football we play. It's static. It's turgid. It's slow. We don't create much. So you just, basically a Peter Crouch would be good at the moment because we just need somebody who can stick and hold that ball. So, look, I thought Fernandes did quite well yesterday. Let's have a look at some of the things Ollie said after the game. He basically said, energy is down. Wolves have had 10 days to remember this. We've had so many games and we need the break. So energy was his excuse yesterday. But again, this to me is not an excuse. We have played a lot of games recently, but you can't use that excuse. You can't use injuries as an excuse. I said this 2 months ago. He can't use energy and injuries as an excuse because at the start of this season, every one of you said that squad's not big enough. It's not. You're going to get injuries. You're going to get fatigue. The squad's tired because it's small. People are injured and it hurts us because the squad is small. That's the problem. So moaning about games, he's had plenty of opportunities to dismiss the Carabao Cup, dismiss the FA Cup. It's nice to win those tournaments and fair play for Ollie to try and win them because some managers don't. But with our squad, has he been intelligent with it? Look at Liverpool. They've played reserves in the FA Cup. And people say, wow, they're already going to win the league. But they could win an iconic treble. So maybe they've got more reason to go for the FA Cup than us, but they've not. They've gone, forget it. We're not interested in that. And lots of clubs did it in the Carabao Cup. But not Ollie, not his coaching staff. We've gone hard and strong in every tournament. So you can't moan about being tired and you can't moan about injuries. The issue is your squad. And that's highlighting. Anyone who's got a problem with that, I've got the evidence for you straight there. We buy a centre attacking midfielder in Bruno Fernandes, and after 20 minutes he's playing as a CDM because we've got a thin squad. And that's the problem. So tiredness for me is a poor excuse, even though I'm sure the players are tired. It's a self-inflicted tiredness by bad management of the football club and the squad. Bruno deep to get on the ball for the back to get runs ahead of him, said Ollie. I mean, that is true. I do agree with him on that. He said I put Bruno deeper because he was in a position as an attacking midfielder and he was wanting people to make runs ahead of him and they weren't. So I put him deeper so that people were ahead of him. I mean, it's an admission of incompetence. I mean, you buy an attacking midfielder, he wants people to be making runs ahead of him so he can create chances, and they're not doing it, so you put him as a holding midfielder so there's loads of players ahead of him. It's absolutely arse about face, let's be honest with you. It's logical from Ollie's point of view, and I sort of understand it, but actually, I'd be more concerned why I'm having to move my attacking midfielder to the halfway line because people aren't making runs ahead of him. That's a huge problem. And going back to that point, if Ollie is saying that people aren't doing what he's asking them to do in training, and Mourinho was saying that 2 years ago, well, look, I've done coaching. I'm sure some of you have done coaching. It's not that difficult to get older people and say, why aren't you doing what I'm telling you to do? And these are people playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world on hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, and they're not making the runs in the final third. I'm sorry, just the same as Mourinho. I said it about Mourinho, I'll say it about Ollie. If these players aren't doing what the manager wants, there's not a sympathy for the manager there. There is an incompetence in the coaching. And again, I said this about Mourinho. He kept trying to push it onto the players. And look, yeah, I think we all know there are problems with these players. We said it after Cardiff at the end of the season. We don't trust these players. They're not good enough. They haven't got the mindset. They haven't got the backbone. But, why are they still at the club then? This is 3 or 4 managers have had some of these players now and they're still there. So I think it reflects on the coaching. If you're not strong enough to get these players to do their job, then you're not good enough to be the coach. I said it about Mourinho. I've got to say it about Ollie as well. And, don't give them new contracts. Like some of these players, let's use Martial as an example. I think Martial in the right system is a very good player. I don't think he suits this system. But if you're one of those people who thinks, well, Martial's never going to be good enough, Ollie gave him a new contract a year ago. So the warning signs are there with some of these players, but we keep them. So I think that's a real issue in relation to lack of coaching. Obviously, he said not many teams break Wolves down. Energy, we need a break. Ighalo would have helped us, he said. And I think, Ighalo would have helped us, but so would Peter Crouch. I'm not going to get excited about Ighalo. I think he is a different type of player. But look, what did Gary Neville said? He cannot it was taking him 24 hours after that deal, and he still couldn't get his head around what we were doing a deal like that. And you can search around for things and say, well, he's a top scorer in the AFCON and all that. But the reality is he's not played in the Premier League for 4 years. Nobody wanted him apart from Spurs and us because we're desperate for a striker to come in on a short-term loan. There's nothing wrong with that. But the club the size of Manchester United, we've had many months to get a striker in. We knew Lukaku was gone a long time ago. Sanchez was allowed to go in August, and we're bringing in Ighalo on the last day of the transfer window. And it's an expensive deal as well. It's like between £2 and £4 million plus his wages. It's very expensive for somebody who, I mean, God knows what we're going to get out of that. So that is obviously a worry. But ultimately, I think that, you know, as I said at the start of the video, and I want to talk about this on the 8 o'clock show tonight. We will be live, of course, at 8 o'clock, talking about that. But I think that with the situation that we've got at Manchester United at the moment, I do have my concerns. Of course I have my concerns about Manchester United. And I think that we are in a situation whereby, you know, you've got to start looking at the stats. I know I'm not a big stat person myself, but 1.4 points a game after 25 games is consistent. That's going to take us to about 55 points. That's not enough for top four. Nowhere near over the last 3 seasons. Worst ever start to a Premier League season. The only season worse than this was 1989, which was abysmal. So it's a worry. It's a worry. And also on top of that, it's the football. The football isn't good enough. We're not creating enough chances. It's boring. And, you know, to pretend that Wolves are a team that keeps loads of clean sheets in your post-match press conference, that's a pop. That displays. A few people have said to me, the thing that worries them about Solskjaer is not his passion, not the fact that he's a fan, not the fact that he's a nice guy, the fact that he doesn't come across as a very intelligent football person. And that is something that's starting to drip into my head a bit. Some of the stuff he comes out with get ridiculed, but where's he getting his facts? Is he just throwing it out of his head? Because one thing about people like Mourinho, even towards the end when it was going wrong for him, his stats and everything he was spot on with. But Ollie comes out with stuff and it's easy to ridicule because even the most, you know, normal fan, you know, any fan really, knows that's not right. And when you're saying, well, who really breaks Wolves down? And you look at the last month and say, well, everybody scored against Wolves in the last month. You go, that's even recent knowledge that you don't know about. And as I said, look, bottom line, last 5 Premier League games, 4 points, 3 losses, 1 draw, and a win against Norwich. It's not good. We're not doing well. And again, you know, that Bruno debut was a letdown because he misused him. But he had to misuse him because the squad is a mess. And that's what it's always been. And that's what we're struggling with. And we're in that situation again now where we're going to say, well, let's get Scotty back. Let's get Pogba back. But Pogba's not been around all season and McTominay doesn't create things. So we're keeping clean sheets. We need goals. We need to get Bruno further up the pitch and Pogba back would help. Rashford's a massive loss as well. But I'll go back to this. Other clubs get injuries. Other clubs have got much worse squads on paper than us, but are doing much better. Sheffield United, they've got nothing like, you know, virtually every one of our players would go into a Sheffield United team on paper, even our bench. But they're not performing like that. And Sheffield United players are performing far better than ours, despite the obvious eyes that we've got a better squad. That's coaching. And people want to make excuses about players missing, but it's coaching. You know, Derby County last season when they came with Lampard, much less better players than us against Mourinho, played us off the park with less better players. Coaching will get the best out of what you've got. We're not getting the best out of what we've got because the coaching's abysmal. So for me, it was what Solskjaer got wrong, I'm afraid. Thanks everyone for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, bottom right hand corner. Smash a like on the video. And tonight it's Sunday Night Live. Really looking forward to that. So make sure you give that a watch. I'll speak to you all soon.